Welcome to the deep dive. Forget what you think you know about nasty political campaigns. Seriously.
Yeah, really.
Today we're going back to a legendary showdown, the 1884 U.S. presidential election. It was a contest so drenched in personal attacks and mudslinging, it honestly makes some modern campaigns look, well, almost polite.
Almost.
We're calling this exploration When America Voted, the Nastiest Election Ever. Question mark intended.
It's a fair question.
Yeah.
This election unfolded during the Gilded Age, a period of really dramatic shifts in America.
Right.
Imagine rapid industrial growth, huge wealth for some, lots of struggle for others, and the political landscape was still kind of figuring itself out after the Civil War.
Deep division still there.
Absolutely. And the Republican and Democratic parties were the two main powerhouses, each with really loyal bases.
Okay. And at the heart of this intense battle were two really compelling but very different guys going for the White House. Representing the Republicans was James G. Blaine of Maine, a gifted speaker, apparently quite the star on the political stage, famously known as the Plumed Knight.
Sounds impressive.
Yeah, for his powerful speeches. But here's where it gets interesting. He also had this less flattering nickname, Magnetic Bill.
Magnetic Bill. That nickname definitely hinted at suspicions around Blaine's money dealings.
Okay.
He was pretty constantly accused of using his political influence for personal gain, especially with railroad companies.
Ah, the railroads. Always the railroads back then.
Right. And the Democrats just hammered this point home relentlessly. They even came up with this memorable, if pretty brutal, chant.
Oh, I think I know this one.
You probably do.
Dun-dun.
Blaine. James G. Blaine. The Continental Liar from the state of Maine.
Oof, talk about a soundbite that sticks. Now, the Democrat hoping to beat him was Grover Cleveland, who was governor of New York at the time.
Right.
And Cleveland presented himself as, well, the total opposite of Blaine, known as Grover the Good.
Grover the Good. Yeah, he really pushed this image of, unwavering honesty, rock-solid integrity, the straight shooter versus the guy tangled up in potential corruption.
So you've got this really fascinating contrast. The dazzling speaker with this kind of cloud of suspicion hanging over him versus the seemingly incorruptible reformer who was maybe a bit more reserved.
Exactly. And our goal in this deep dive is to really unpack the key scandals, the personal attacks, really personal.
Yeah.
And the surprising twists that define this whole thing. We want to uncover those, aha moments that might shed some light on how these political contests work, even today.
Okay, so let's jump straight into the deep end then. The scandals, the personal attacks. This election got ugly and fast.
It really did. Just weeks before the election, the Republicans launched this major offensive, focusing on something incredibly personal about Grover Cleveland.
Yeah.
The revelation that he had fathered an illegitimate child years before.
Weeks before the election.
Yeah. A political earthquake. Details came out about Cleveland having a child with a woman named Maria Halpin. The Republicans, well, they pounced. Immediately.
And they had that chant, right? The really nasty one.
Oh, yeah. Their rather cruel, almost playground-style rhyme became instantly notorious. Ma, where's my pa? Going to the White House? Ha, ha, ha.
It's just, wow, deeply personal, vicious stuff.
It was. But here's where the story takes a bit of an unexpected turn, maybe.
Okay.
Cleveland's response wasn't the usual political spin or deflection we might expect.
No.
He reportedly told his campaign, simply tell the truth.
Really? Just like that?
Just like that. He acknowledged his involvement, admitted he'd provided financial support for the child. And what's striking, I think, is that this honesty facing such a direct and personal attack, it seems to have actually resonated with some voters.
Huh. So instead of hiding, he owned it.
It kind of painted him as someone willing to take responsibility, maybe. It's fascinating.
Was there any sense at the time why that might have worked in such a negative environment? Maybe people were just tired of the usual denials.
That's a really good question. It does suggest, maybe, that voters were weary of the usual political dodging. Cleveland's admission, yeah, it was damaging, but it also stood in stark contrast to the ongoing allegations against Blaine, which were often denied or deflected.
Right.
Sort of implied a certain integrity, perhaps, that might have appealed to people looking for something different. And meanwhile, while Cleveland was dealing with this very personal issue,
Yeah.
the Democrats were just relentless, keeping the focus squarely on the corruption story around Blaine, the Plumed Knight.
They certainly were, and they got a pretty significant boost from a group with a name that sounds a bit strange today. The Mugwumps.
Mugwumps, yes.
Let's unpack this. Who exactly were these Mugwumps and why were they so important?
Okay, so the Mugwumps were basically a faction of reform-minded Republicans. These were Republicans who were genuinely troubled, deeply troubled by what they saw as widespread corruption in their own party.
Specifically Blaine.
Specifically the accusations against Blaine, yeah. Their conviction about this was so strong that they took a truly radical step for the time.
Which was?
They publicly announced they were supporting the Democratic candidate, Grover Cleveland.
Wait, Republicans openly campaigning for the Democrat? In that era? That's huge.
It was a massive deal, a significant blow to Republican unity, and a powerful statement, really, about principle possibly trumping party loyalty for these guys.
So what impact did that have?
Well, it really highlighted the internal splits within the Republican Party over ethics and corruption. The Mugwumps basically gave Cleveland a kind of stamp of approval for voters who were already worried about Blaine's integrity.
And the name stuck around, didn't it? Mugwump?
It did. It sort of came to mean someone who breaks with their party on principle or stays politically independent.
Okay, so you've got scandal hitting both sides, Cleveland's personal life, Blaine's alleged corruption, plus this Mugwump defection. But then comes this moment, a real turning point. Not about the past, but a mistake in the present. We're talking about the infamous Romanism and rebellion gaffe. Can you set the scene for us?
Right. This happened really late in the campaign, just days before the election. Blaine was at a gathering in New York City with a group of Protestant ministers.
Okay.
And during this meeting, one of the ministers, Reverend Samuel Burchard, stood up and made this incredibly inflammatory statement. He referred to the Democratic Party as the party of rum, Romanism, and rebellion.
Rum, Romanism, and rebellion. Wow. Let's break that down. Why was that phrase just so politically toxic?
It hit on so many levels. Rum, that was a pretty clear dig at immigrant communities, especially the Irish and Germans, often associated with drinking or saloon culture.
Okay, targeting immigrants?
Then Romanism, that was just a straight-up bigoted slur against Catholic voters. It implied their loyalty was to the Pope in Rome, not to America.
Vicious. And the last part?
Rebellion. That was deliberately trying to stir up Civil War hatreds, linking the Democrats to the Confederacy. Remember, the war wasn't that far in the past.
So it was like a trifecta of insults aimed at key Democratic voting blocs, particularly in a place like New York.
Exactly. A perfect storm of offensive stereotypes. And the crucial point here, the absolute killer, was that Blaine was there. He heard it. And he didn't immediately push back. He didn't repudiate it right away.
He just let it hang there.
That silence, or inaction, proved utterly devastating. Now, some historians debate if he fully grasped the impact in the moment, but his failure to give a quick, clear condemnation, politically fatal.
And you can bet the Democrats noticed.
Oh, instantly. They recognized the gift they'd been handed. They moved incredibly fast to spread that quote everywhere, especially in New York, targeting those Irish and Catholic communities directly.
Yeah.
It was like finding the ultimate weapon just days before the finish line.
A campaign manager's absolute worst nightmare. And it obviously had a huge impact on the result because this election ended up being incredibly close, didn't it? Especially in New York.
Unbelievably close. Absolutely. New York State became the whole bowl game. The election literally hung in the balance for days while they counted the votes.
So when the final numbers came in,
Cleveland had won, but by the slimmest, and I mean slimmest, of margins.
give us a sense of just how close we're talking.
Okay, the final electoral vote count was Cleveland 219, Blaine 182. Seems clear enough there.
Right.
But the popular vote in New York, the state that decided the entire election, Cleveland won New York by just 1,047 votes.
Wow. Out of how many?
Out of over 1.1 million votes cast in the state.
1,047 votes. That's astonishingly thin.
It really is. And most political analysts then and now agree that Romanism, and rebellion gaffe hitting those specific voters,
Yeah.
combined with the earlier defection of those principled Mugwumps, those were almost certainly the decisive factors in Blaine losing New York and therefore the presidency by that razor-thin margin.
So when all the dust finally settled, Grover Cleveland pulls off this truly historic victory. Why was this win so significant in the bigger picture of American politics?
Well, Cleveland's win was monumental. It marked the first time a Democrat had won the presidency since James Buchanan, way back before the Civil War.
Wow, that's a long streak broken.
It ended a solid 24-year run of Republican dominance in the White House. If you connect this to the bigger picture, it really represented a significant shift, or at least a potential shift, in the American political landscape. It showed that voter sentiment could overcome these really long-standing party loyalties.
Okay, so looking back at this incredibly, let's call it nasty election,
Yeah.
what are the key lessons, the takeaways that still feel relevant for us today?
This deep dive really does highlight some maybe timeless truths about presidential elections. The 1884 contest, I think, really underscores the lasting importance of a candidate's character, or
Right.
at least the public perception of it.
How people saw them.
Exactly. Voters clearly had to weigh the serious allegations against Blaine, against Cleveland's admitted personal issue, which he maybe handled more honestly. It's complex. It also vividly illustrates the unpredictable, sometimes devastating consequences of campaign gaffes, unforced errors. That Burchard quote is a classic example.
Absolutely. One wrong moment.
And maybe most profoundly, it demonstrates that even in a really deeply partisan era like the Gilded Age was, a segment of the electorate might still prioritize principles, things like integrity,
Yeah.
over just sticking with their party, like we saw with the Mugwumps.
Principle over party.
Yeah. So while it was undeniably a campaign full of mudslinging and nastiness, it also serves as this really compelling case study with lessons that I think still resonate in how we understand presidential elections.
Absolutely. So just to quickly recap our deep dive into 1884, we've seen intense personal attacks, major scandals, both personal and financial, and then this pivotal unforced error right at the end, all leading to an incredibly close nail-biter finish and ultimately a historic election result. And despite all that negativity, it offers these fascinating insights into what voters care about and the enduring impact of both character, perceived character anyway, and just sheer missteps in presidential politics.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener.
Oh.
Think about how these very same dynamics, the intense scrutiny of character, the potential for scandal to completely derail a campaign, the huge impact of unexpected mistakes or gaffes, how these things continue to shape political races in our own time.
They really do.
Reflect on how sometimes seemingly small events or maybe unscripted moments can still have such a profound influence on who wins and who loses. It really makes you ponder the timeless nature of these political dramas, doesn't it? And the enduring power of those unpredictable twists and turns.